This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. I've begun a number of videos speaking about Donald Trump's lack of intellect and curiosity. I've spoken many times about his unbridled self-interest, about his abject disregard for our country and the founding documents and institutions which have brought America into our 243rd year. Between my podcast and here on YouTube, I have spoken for hundreds of hours about Donald Trump's unmatched presidential corruption and the pace at which his criminality manifests itself. All of that is terrible. Terrible. But there's another downside aspect of his being president of the United States that has me exceedingly concerned. And it has to do with all of those things I just mentioned, combined with his constitutional authority as Commander-in-Chief of the United States Armed Forces. Look, having served for years on active duty in the United States Marine Corps, I like to think that I have some knowledge about the critically important role that the U.S. military plays globally, and also its dramatic overuse on that same global stage. Well, if you're a clear-thinking person who doesn't walk through life in a Fox News propaganda-induced haze all day, you are likely someone who agrees with me and the tens of millions of other Americans about both Donald Trump's deficiencies and the misuse of the American military. A recent ABC News Ipsos poll revealed that Americans are increasingly concerned about Donald Trump and his handling of the recent matters related to Iran. Specifically, they were asked, do you approve or disapprove of the way President Trump is handling the current situation with Iran? And according to the poll, 56% of Americans disapprove. When asked about whether we are more or less safe as a nation in the wake of Donald Trump's killing of Qasem Soleimani, the result was even more stark. The specific language of the poll question was, do you think the U.S. airstrike in Iraq that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani has made the United States more safe, less safe, or hasn't had much effect one way or the other? And the results indicated that only 25% believed killing Soleimani has made us more safe. And can you blame them, me, us, for our legitimate concerns about Donald Trump and his misfit band of leaders, because all that is delivered in the way of answers for the underlying justifications for pushing America and the world closer to global military conflict than we've been in decades are lies. Lies. Stories clearly concocted after the fact in an effort to cover for the irresponsible decisions of our dipshit POTUS, clearly meant to distract from his current domestic troubles. Why do I say that? Well, Donald Trump claimed that he made his decision to target and kill Soleimani because of not just the attack on the single U.S. embassy in Baghdad, but several others. In a rambling diatribe of one of his moron-packed MAGA rallies, which was long on bluster and very short on details, he told the Ohio crowd this.
Soleimani was actively planning new attacks, and he was looking very seriously at our embassies, and not just the embassy in Baghdad, but we stopped him, and we stopped him quickly, and we stopped him cold.
And then, the following day, he sat down with Laura Ingraham on Fox News and repeated the nonsense, saying that there were 4 embassies in total, filled with Americans that were under grave and imminent threat.
Did they have large-scale attacks planned for other embassies? And if those were planned, why can't we reveal that to the American people? Wouldn't that help your case?
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies. And I think that probably Baghdad already started. They were really amazed that we came in with that kind of a force. We came in with very powerful force and drove them out. You know, that ended almost immediately. But Baghdad certainly would have been the lead, but I think it would have been 4 embassies, could have been military bases, could have been a lot of other things too. But it was imminent, and then all of a sudden, he was gone.
I believe it would have been 4 embassies, and I think that probably Baghdad already started. I think it would have been 4 embassies. Could have been military bases. Could have been a lot of other things, too. Ugh, what a feckless simpleton. Well, draft-dodging Donnie isn't the only one speaking like this, in vague generalities. Because when asked about this and pressed about this on Face the Nation, full-time Trump excuse maker and apparent part-time Secretary of Defense Mark Esper did his best to cover for Trump, but ultimately, he blew it.
Why was there a difference?
What the president said was he believed that it probably and could have been attacks against additional embassies. I shared that view. I know other members of the national security team shared that view. That's why I deployed thousands of American paratroopers to the Middle East to reinforce our embassy in Baghdad and other sites throughout the region.
Probably and could have been. That sounds more like an assessment than a specific, tangible threat with a decisive piece of intelligence.
Well, the president didn't say it was a tangible, he didn't cite a specific piece of evidence. What he said is he believed.
Are you saying there wasn't one?
I didn't see one with regard to 4 embassies. What I'm saying is I share the president's view that probably my expectation was they were going to go after our embassies.
So the Secretary of Defense of the United States Armed Forces did not see specific evidence that Iran was targeting 4 U.S. embassies, as Donald Trump claimed. Wouldn't that be information that would have been up in the face of the top man at the Pentagon? Of course it would have. Which means Trump is lying. And Mark Esper, while willing to run interference for Trump, isn't quite as comfortable lying as Donald Trump. Further, we know this 4 embassies claim to be a lie because when given the chance to back up the claim with the granular, actionable intelligence, they did not do so. Not even when briefing members of Congress who have the sole constitutional authority under Article 1, Section 8 of whether or not to declare war. Also, on Sunday, Republican Senator Mike Lee was directly asked about it by Jake Tapper, and his answer is stunning.
That was disappointing.
Did, in the briefing you experienced, did they say anything about 4 U.S. embassies were going to be targeted by Soleimani and his forces, as President Trump said he believed on Friday?
I didn't hear anything about that, and several of my colleagues have said the same. So that was news to me. It certainly wasn't something that I recall being raised in the classified briefing.
Secretary of State Pompeo said at the White House on Friday that he did tell members of Congress about the threat to U.S. embassies, as the president revealed publicly at his campaign rally when he said at least 1 embassy was going to be threatened. Take a listen to Secretary Pompeo on Friday.
All of the intelligence that we've briefed, that you've heard today, I assure you, in an unclassified setting, we provide in the classified setting as well.
So that's not true?
Well, look, I'm not sure exactly what he's trying to say there. I don't recall being told, look, there were 4 embassies.
And Mike Lee isn't the only conservative in Congress who has taken part in these briefings who is sounding an alarm. Justin Amash from Michigan tweeted, "The administration didn't present evidence to Congress regarding even 1 embassy. The 4 embassies claim seems to be totally made up, and they have never presented evidence of imminence, a necessary condition to act without congressional approval with respect to any of this." And this is part of the reason that so many millions of Americans are uncomfortable and disapproving of Donald Trump's handling of all of this. This, in part, is why tens of millions of Americans feel less safe. At its root, it is a fundamental disregard for the United States military and the use of military force. Certainly, since World War II, there has been a drastic realignment relative to the ease with which American presidents put the lives of U.S. warfighters in danger. However, Donald Trump has taken this to a whole different level. This clod, this degenerate who personally refused the call to military service himself, speaks with pride about renting out to the highest bidder the very lives of our military service men and women, and to brutal human rights abusers like Saudi Arabia as well.
We're sending more to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is paying us for it. You know, we're doing something that nobody's ever done. I said to Saudi Arabia, we have a very good relationship with Saudi Arabia. I said, listen, you're a very rich country. You want more troops? I'm going to send them to you, but you've got to pay us. They're paying us. They've already deposited $1 billion in the bank. We are going to help them, but these rich countries have to pay for it. South Korea gave us $500 million. They never gave us any. They gave us $500 million. I said, you got to help us along. We have 32,000 soldiers in South Korea protecting you from North Korea. You've got to pay. And they gave us $500 million.
First of all, into what bank has Saudi Arabia deposited $1 billion? And secondly, the brave men and women of the United States Armed Forces serve with pride. They've sworn a sacred oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And apparently, Donald Trump believes they are his private, underpaid mercenary force that he can send here and there at his whim because this nation or that wants to rent them. This is a recipe for the utter destruction of military morale and esprit de corps. They signed on the dotted line to protect the homeland and her people, not to join a mercenary force rented by the hour like some seedy roadside motel. And most certainly not to Saudi Arabia, the nation that likely bankrolled 9/11. Can you imagine the justifiable Republican outrage if a Democratic president went on MSNBC and bragged like a goon that the United States military was nothing more than a mercenary force to be used for the protection of despots and tyrants around the globe? This gives us a terrifying glimpse into the mind of Donald Trump. As president, he is using the U.S. military as some part of some extortion scheme, some sleazy mafia-like protection racket. And instead of patriotic outrage from Republicans, what do we get? Crickets. We hear nothing but crickets. Because their love of flag and the troops and the country is nothing more than a jingoistic means to an end. They're frauds and liars who crave power and influence, and they don't care to even slow the steady pace of Donald Trump in his campaign against the stability and reputation of the United States of America. Which leaves us utterly unable to trust them or him when it comes to matters of reliability or truthfulness in these ever-important and precarious matters of the international use of military force.